Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We have our respected guest already joined us, and I would like to introduce him to you. Professor Dr. Ger Graus OBE is a distinguished leader in education, known for his innovative approach and global influence. He was the first global director of education at Kidzania and the founding CEO of the Children's University. Dr. Ger has also held prominent academic roles in different universities. He's a champion of creativity and equity in education. He has received numerous awards, including an OBE for services to children. Dr. Ger is also an accomplished author, and his book, Through a Different Lens, just came out and is now available on his website and on Amazon. So how are you, Dr. Ger?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I'm well. As you know, I was diagnosed with cancer of the esophagus just before Christmas, so I am on my journey of recovery. I have a target that I will be visiting the Middle East before the end of 2025. It is one of my favorite places on earth, and why would I not have it as a target to be with you? So come November time, I'm hoping to join you, and things are better than they were. So there we are.
Alhamdulillah, we are so pleased to see you here, Dr. Ger, and this is my favorite part of this session, that we want to talk about the title that's been given to you as the Willy Wonka of education. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think our audience will be very interested in listening to that piece. They've been curious. They've been asking me where did that title come from?
Well, thank you. It's a title I like very much. So quite a few years ago, a friend of mine, Alex Beard, was writing a book essentially about education and leadership and education and learning. And he came to see me at Kidzania, London, and he coined that phrase, Jean-Jacques Rousseau meets Willy Wonka, and I love it. And I'll tell you why I love it. I think what we don't do enough in education is concentrate on the who. I think we concentrate a great deal on the what and on many other things. So when we go into a school or a college or a university or a business, we see on the doors titles, principal, vice chancellor,
yes,
director, head teacher, whatever. But actually that doesn't tell me a single thing. The only thing that tells me is that the person at the other side of the door is connected to a job description of some sort. And when Alex called me Jean-Jacques Rousseau meets Willy Wonka, it coins. He's had to think about coming up with that phrase. Something in what I do or who I am made him react like that. So the first thing I would say is I would encourage everybody to do away with signs called director and principal, and actually perhaps talk to their children and their families and their colleagues as to what the sign should be that's on the door that tells them about the who, as opposed to just the what. So the Willy Wonka meets Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in a sense, talks about education rather than schooling, and talks about the whole concept and the joy of learning and the fun of learning. Now, Sahar, I sent you a picture earlier. Here we are. So the dancer in the painting is Anna Pavlova, and the place is the Kelvin Grove Museum and Art Gallery in Glasgow in Scotland. The little 3-year-old then girl is called Becca. Becca is now about 20, And her mum, Kirsty, sent me the photograph all those years ago when I started the Children's University. And just think, Kelvin Grove Museum. If you walk up to the building, it says Kelvin Grove Museum and Art Gallery, which is a very formal thing to say. And I've wanted them to replace Kelvin Grove Museum and Art Gallery with that photograph, because that photograph tells me what happens and who visits and how much joy they experience from learning. So that Willy Wonka, Jean-Jacques Rousseau thing about it can be education and fun at the same time. And that's why that Willy Wonka description is so important. And that's why Kirsty in her photograph. In my book, then many years later, I just wanted to mention my very good friend, Andrew Gualfalco from Barcelona, says, I have found education's Johan Cruyff. Both descriptions are much more important to me than professor or doctor or director or even OBE. And I think we should change our mindset collectively as educators as to who we are and what we stand for rather than what our title is. And if we all do that, and if we have that same discussion with our parents as co-educators, and our children, however young, as co-educators, even as young as little Becca, then we have a different conversation about joy and learning and outcomes. And I think that would be a very good starting point. I hope that answers in a very long-winded way your first question.
Thank you for taking us through that. I studied in Scotland. I was a student at University of Strathclyde, and I have been to that museum. So I'm happy that you mentioned it and you took me back through the memory lane. That has been very good exposure for me as well. There were many things that I learned because that was my first time I was out of Pakistan learning in a university that was offering a completely different perspective on education, because in Pakistan we were still very much rote memory heavy, So when I went there and I started my education, I felt that I was the Charlie in that, chocolate factory. That's how I looked at that place.
And experience is everything. I urge everybody on this who is with us today, my very dear friend, Dr. James Bradburn, who is a museologist, an expert in learning in museums and learning outside the classroom. I urge you to look him up. His first statement to me many years ago was 85% of all learning takes place out of school. Why is there no recognition of this? It makes no sense. And of course, James and I were both are advisors to the Fondazione Reggio Children, and were to our very dear friend, the now late Carla Rinaldi, and the three of us were quite a formidable trio of people who would argue in favor of experience and actually almost against rote learning. I can't think of anything more dull than rote learning. If we have no purpose, then we have no passion. If we have no passion, learning becomes very difficult, and enjoying learning becomes near impossible. So it takes me back to the Rebecca picture, and Willy Wonka, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Thank you, Dr. Ger. I want to ask you on that same theme of Willy Wonka. I want to stick to it for one more question. When I'm reading your book, which I consider my golden ticket. But as I wander through the experience-based learning room, speak into the social mobility elevator, and get a taste of your aspiration-making machine, I have to ask, what's the one room in your factory the world still doesn't believe in, but absolutely should?
The room is called The Beautiful Game, GAME, The Beautiful Game. When I was a little boy growing up in the Netherlands, from a very early age, I had two key role models. One was intensely personal. My grandfather, the only adult in my life I loved, and at that age, and the only adult who loved me. And that's very personal and very close, as you can imagine. The second one was a football player, a soccer player called Johan Cruyff, who to this day I deem to be the greatest player ever, the greatest manager ever, and certainly he was voted by many as the most influential person on the game. And what I learned from Johan Cruyff was not his turn, how to score goals, but what I learned was beauty, that we can achieve by doing them beautifully. So when you watch him play, it's more than a game. Just like a good school is more than a school. What he did, he achieved through beauty. And when you look at that image that we've just looked at, Becca's image at Kelvin Grove, the thing that strikes me about this image more than anything is beauty. Her learning is so personal. She is so Anna Pavlova. She has such joy. Importantly, at such an early age, because we underestimate the capabilities and the qualities of our young people.
Yes.
I don't need to be 14 to be beautiful and brilliant. I don't need to be 10 either. I can be 0. Or I can be Becca and I can be 3. And for me, the observation going into a classroom that is more than a classroom, in a school that is more than a school, is beauty. Watching children acquire knowledge, watching children experience, watching the click is beautiful. It's important, it's key, it gets you good grades, but much more than anything, it's beautiful. Watching a child make the connection to the next phase in their life, because that's what that learning is. Watch the smile on their face. When many years ago, the Office for Standards in Education launched its first framework in 1992, it had in it that a lesson could only be judged as a top grade lesson if there was evidence of awe and wonder. And there were many debates had about how do you judge awe and wonder. And the stupidity of the debate strikes me to this day, because the answer is so easy. Look in their eyes. The evidence of awe and wonder is here. And it's almost like the heart and the brain's flashpoint. And that's the beauty bit. So my room is the beautiful game room. It is the joy of experience. It is the joy of success. It is the joy of achievement, not attainment. It is the joy of achievement. It is watching my now 19-year-old daughter just come back from Italy. She's studying Italian and Spanish at Oxford University, and she's doing Italian beginners. And the recognition in that 19-year-old that she was in Bologna in northern Italy amongst people who spoke no English, and when she opened her mouth, she experienced awe and wonder because the communication happened. And there is no difference between the 19-year-old Imogen and the 3-year-old Becca at Kelvin Grove. And that is the essence of education and the beauty of learning and the beauty of the game.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ger. And I completely agree with you. I think I had a podcast recorded 1 or 2 days ago, and we were talking about education, and we were talking about not a lesson, not a curriculum, not schooling. We were talking about education, and we were disappointed that we are failing our next generation because we're not looking into how to transform education.
But we must be brave enough to distinguish between education and schooling. We must
Correct.
be brave enough to distinguish between teaching and learning. I am very fortunate to work with an organization called Childbase, who I think are the best early years providers, at least in the United Kingdom and probably beyond. And the reason I love them is because when I speak to them, when I have discussions with them, and when I witness what they do, they move me to tears. This is not about, that nonsense about early years is about getting children school ready. I don't. Who are these people who come up with this nonsense? The purpose of education is for us to empower children at the youngest of ages to be life confident, not school ready. And I think we need to be brave enough to think big like that. And I love Mike Thompson, who is the founder of Childbase, and we're hoping to do some work. We're already working in Sharjah. We're hoping to do more work across the Middle East because the Middle East is such a fertile ground. It's an irony, isn't it, that the place that is geographically like a desert is intellectually and emotionally like a sponge. And that's what makes it so beautiful.
I completely agree with you. I think that's the reason when I came to Middle East, I landed in Dubai, and I stayed there for about 7 years, and then another 10 years Abu Dhabi, and then 5 years in Bahrain. I feel like, this is home now. And there is so much that I can give back to the community and to the country, because these countries have given so much to me. And
it's totally my favorite place to work. I'm very fortunate that I'm one of the advisors to His Highness in Sharjah, and I cannot begin to tell you the joy those conversations bring me. Unrivaled.
Brilliant. So Dr. Ger, you just talked about schools differentiating schooling and educating. These are two different terms. You also mentioned that your favorite statement was you love a beautiful game. You mentioned that everybody is an educator, and I love that idea. It is liberating, but it made me nervous also. In a world where misinformation spreads faster than facts, how do we make sure the educators are actually adding value rather than noise? Can this beautiful democracy of education accidentally backfire because there is bias, there is misinformation, and there is influence by media?
There is a chance, but as long as we're around, it's a small one. And I think the other thing is what we must be clear about, just like I mentioned earlier, we need to have the courage of distinction between teaching and learning, between schooling and education. We need to recognize that the word educator and the word teacher are not the same.
Correct.
So I'm thinking of my grandfather. My grandfather was an educator. He wasn't a teacher, but he taught me things and he enabled me to learn things because he gave me experiences. So what we need a collective societal debate about what our roles are. And one of the things that concerns me at times in the Middle East is that we have a culture where the nanny drops the child off at school, and the parent is far removed from being a co-educator. We need to have the debate that says to the parent, in order to enable your child to become better educated, to learn better, these are the things we need you to do at weekends, in the evenings. You need to watch David Attenborough together. Whatever it is, we need to pencil these things out. But importantly, we need to pencil them out together. This is not the teacher telling the parent what to do. This is the parent and the teacher collaborating in knowing their children better. And in doing so, providing opportunities for the children to experience and to learn. So I ask the question wherever I go. I meet with children and I ask the question, why do you go to school? And I would say in about 80% of the cases, the answer I get is because I have to. So our first job as co-educators is to make that answer better. And to define the role parents and nannies and grandparents and aunts and uncles and neighbors and teachers and teaching assistants and museums and libraries and galleries and farms and zoos have to play in this, because we have to understand that the most beautiful thing, going back to Becca, about education is it is impossible to stop learning. It is possible to make that learning better and more meaningful and more joyful. So it needs to have that discussion. The discussion about, just picture this, next year, my wife and I will be going back to the Netherlands at some point, where I was born. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to go to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, where they are live repairing Rembrandt's Night Watch. I want to sit and watch that. And I actually want to sit with children and watch that, because the discussion is no longer about the painting, but the discussion is about the life of the painting and the person who painted it. And it becomes a history lesson, it becomes a geography lesson, it becomes a social sciences lesson, it becomes a social mobility lesson, it becomes a science lesson, because certain paints, when you put them together, turn into certain colors. And it becomes a values lesson and a discussion about beauty. And that, whether it's mathematics or art or science, that is what education is. It is a thing of beauty. And that's where we need to get back to. And that is not the teacher's job. That is all our jobs. And that's why we are all co-educators.
You draw a powerful connection between early childhood context and social mobility. And I agree. It is foundational, but in systems where early years education is either underfunded or simply not prioritized, how do we practically bridge that gap, especially when I don't want to talk about political or private funding system, but we have seen that often rewards quick wins over generational change?
It's a very interesting question. So first and foremost, there's a common sense argument to this, an argument that everybody will understand. When we build a house, we start with a foundation.
Correct.
Because what we know is that the better thought through, the better funded, the better executed our house's foundation is, the higher we can safely build. When we plant a tree, we nurture from the root. When we school children, we spend no money on early years, and we start spending money from about the age of 11 or 12. It is completely bonkers. It makes no sense whatsoever. So the first priority needs to be early years education and learning for the child to become life confident, not school ready. We're not here to serve the system. We're here to serve the child.
Correct.
And the child's journey. End story. Now, there are important factors that then come into play. And some of those are uncomfortable, and some of those are uncomfortable truths. The child who is born poor, in poor contexts, even contexts that may be dangerous, criminally dangerous, that child needs additional investment. If we want to wrong the right and we want to provide the opportunity of equity, we need to recognize that we need to fund and think in inverse proportion to success and opportunity. When we collectively do that, co-educators' collective responsibility, we have a real chance to change the world. Now, there are some very practical implications here. If I look at the Middle East, some people are richer than others. Some people are Qatari or Sharjah or Bahraini, indigenous, and other people are guest workers. Let me tell you something. In the interest of all, and in the interest of the greater good and of our society, if we only invest of those into those closest to us, we will fail. Because our society will only succeed through equity and equality of opportunity. And if an equality of opportunity, incidentally, does not mean that everybody has the same. Equality of opportunity, to create that, means that those who are poorest need to receive more. And it's a discussion that may at times be uncomfortable and may be alien. But when I have my glorious meetings in Sharjah, when I have with His Highness and the fellow board members, when I have my glorious meetings with Childbase and Mike Thompson, I know that we're right. But what we need to do is we need to not make this discussion just the privilege of the educated. We need to make this discussion a societal debate. And in the end, what we need to do is we need to make the main outcome of education to do the right thing.
Absolutely. I'm going to disconnect with the theme that we've been talking about, and I'm going to take you to another line that I made a note of. Children can only aspire to what they know exists. It's a beautiful line, but it stopped me in my tracks. But in an age where kids are bombarded with everything from YouTube, stardom to crypto millionaires, how do we ensure that aspiration doesn't become overwhelmed? Does showing them too much actually stifle action? Where are we heading with it?
I think there's a couple of quick fires. One is it's about the child and not the adult. There are too many adults who live their lives through their children. And actually the person who wants to become the lawyer is the mum or the dad and not the child.
Yeah.
Right? So let's just be honest about that, and let's put that out there. The other thing is that children can only aspire to what they know exists. Adults can only aspire to what they know exists. Grandparents can only aspire to what they know exists. This is about widening horizons. This is about opening windows. This is about opening blinds. This is about opening curtains and doors. Right? And the more we can collectively do this, the better a chance we provide our children with. But there's something else about this. It is not just about academic attainment. It is about looking outside that window and seeing the heartbreaking injustices that we see not a million miles from the Middle East. I find it on a daily basis. This is a very personal reference rather than a political one. When I see on a daily basis, as I watch Al Jazeera or any other news outlet, and I see the injustices that go on in Gaza, on a personal level, I am affronted and offended that other human beings can do this. Children can only aspire to what they know exists, is an intensely humane statement. It's not about maths and it's not about science. Correct. It is about who we are. And we need to, with our children, stand still and again look at the values of education and its intense importance and the difficult, honest conversation that we need to have with ourselves sometimes around this. But of course it is true, isn't it? That we are, in the greater scheme of things, my generation has failed our children's generation. And in my end years of my life, I'm trying very hard to make amends. I don't think I'm doing very well, but I will not stop doing that. And I would urge other people in the smallest possible way to join us, because you know what? Mathematics and science and art and humanities only matter when it becomes about people.
Correct.
And when we get it right. And we've lost sight of it. And we need that back.
You just spoke beautifully about humanity, what they aspire to and where the aspirations are coming from. And you spoke about, all of this is making sense and it is becoming valuable when you put humanity in it. I want to talk about your heroes here. By putting heroes and sheroes on a pedestal, are we unintentionally telling children that impact requires fame? What about the quiet change makers, the teachers in tiny classrooms struggling with resources but still making sure children learn? And I know one of those teachers is actually sitting right in this session and watching us. And she's my hero because there is no money to be spent, but she's making every single day learning fun and experiential for those children. And the child who stands up for a friend, where do they fit in the narrative of inspiration or heroism?
Bob Geldof and the late Desmond Tutu as Carlo Rinaldi, as Shah Rukh Khan, as so many. I think the person I talk most about is Mrs. Poole. Mrs. Poole was my eldest daughter Anna's teaching assistant. And Mrs. Poole, when Anna started going to that lovely Mottram St Andrew primary school, and before she went, Daddy was everything. Daddy, 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 daddy. And she came home and it was Mrs. Poole. And I'm going, whoa, what's happening here? What's happened to Daddy and who is this Mrs. Poole? I am talking about us putting children in a position where they can find their own role models. It is not up to me at any stage in life to turn around to any of my 3 children and say, these are the people you should admire. What I need to do is to say, there's a million people here, and I know some of them, and you need to, I think, look at all of them and then tell me which one you love most today and which one you will love even more tomorrow, because it changes as we get as we get older, as we get wiser, as we get more stupid sometimes, right? It changes. One of the things I used to say to the staff at Kidzania, particularly my beautiful colleagues in Qatar, I used to say to them, today, a 5-year-old will walk up to you, and to them you will be the bee's knees. They will really think you are the pilot. They really will want to be like you. And it is up to you to make that dream come true or not to bother. And if you're not bothered, please leave now. I'd say the same to every teacher. At some point in your career, some child will walk into your classroom and at least quietly to him or herself say, today I want to be like you. Singularly, the biggest professional compliment you will ever receive. And if you're really lucky, you will experience it. My German teacher was Mr. Burskens, and 50 years on, he's 82 years old now. He has a copy of my book, and he was moved to tears. The fact that I said I became who I am because of him. Many years later, I was told by one of my pupils that he is the way he is because of me. And they are deep, profound, joyous experiences. And if you're lucky enough to witness it, frame it in gold, because it's worth more than an OBE, and it's worth more than a handshake from the Queen or whatever else.
Absolutely.
It's beauty. It's the beauty of education personified, and the professional beauty of being an educator expressed.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Ger. It just reminded me of a student who joined my school when I was a principal, and I was very young principal. It was my first experience as a principal, so I was teaching as well, and sometimes I was training teachers by teaming up with them in the classroom. And I remember there was a kindergarten child, a boy, who came in, and every day he wasn't talking. So every day I was making an effort to make him talk. He was very shy, not mute, like shy, And then finally he started opening up. And one time in one of the activities, somebody asked him, who would you want to be when you grow up? And he took my name. And it made everybody laugh because I'm a female and he's a male. So they said, oh, you can't be Miss Kalani. But I knew what exactly he was saying. And mashallah, now he's all grown up and very successful in his life. And I'm so proud of him.
It is for us as educators to sit and observe. No, there is no greater observer, no greater educator for the last 50 years than my very dear friend, the late Carla Rinaldi, who was the president of the Fondazione Reggio Children. And I urge again people to find her and to listen and observe. She was such an extraordinary observer of children's behavior. It was a sheer joy. And one of the things that we do wrong in our schooling system is we are too focused on teaching and content.
Correct.
And not focused enough on learning and methodology.
And that's what my struggle has been. I mean, there are people, when I meet them, they want me to work with them and design a creative and a unique education system for their school so they can position themselves uniquely in the market. Well, there is market in the background. Obviously, you will always have to look at the commercial buzz and all that. However, my question to those investors and school owners is, are you ready for that kind of change? When you are talking about, we want unique elements embedded in our program, yes, perfect. But are your teachers ready?
There is a change, Sahar, that is needed away from return on investment and towards return on involvement. I promise you, and with many colleagues, again I'm talking child-based, many colleagues, we can give you the best schools in the world. But the profitability is long-term, and the profitability is linked to quality, not to quick fixes. So I would actually say to parents, if somebody in a school mentions the words return on investment to you, I'd start to run away. Because when the balance sheet matters more than the child, we're in the wrong place. But when people start to talk about the long-term side of things, that becomes a very, very different quality discussion around the child. And so joyous, so successful. But people are just going to need to be a little bit better. And plus the fact, do you know what? Our children are not money-making machines. I don't want anything to do with that. Our children are success stories. And that's a very different narrative.
Dr. Ger, we are coming to the end of this session. But before we can do that, I promised the participants that if they have any question, they can always type those in question and answer section. Then we will start picking your questions at the end. But before you start asking questions, I have one last question for you, Dr. Ger. When I first walked into Kidzania, I genuinely thought I had entered a chocolate factory. Everything sparkled with possibility. And it left me in awe. Like, I was like, oh my God, I want to have a school like that. And that's where I connected with you, if you remember. I wanted to open a school that was a replica of Kidzania. But right now I'm thinking, because I know children are exposed to so many things. There are so many Verocas, there are so many Augustuses, there are so many Mikes right now. So what's the compass? Who's holding the compass to ignite the purpose when the children are having the tour of that wonderland, that factory, chocolate factory, or whatever is offering that experiential learning? Are the people who are navigating through that experience, people who are in charge of that navigation, are they trained enough? Are they the right people in those positions? Do they know that what kind of experience they are actually letting children have? That's something that I always wonder about. What entitles them, qualifies
very fair
them
question.
To be in that position? That's one. Then another one is, I know right now we're talking about Kidzania, and Kidzania has now crowd. It has commercial buzz. Is it time that you and I open a new kind of factory, one where mindset is the golden ticket, perhaps? So these are two questions.
A couple of observations.
The floor is yours. Yeah.
First of all, Kidzanias, not all of them, there are one or two exceptions. Kidzanias are part of a commercial model. And in board meetings, too often the finance director is more powerful than the education director. It's a mistake. And it's a mistake that Kidzania, is my view, over the years will pay for. Should we start something else? Yes, we should. Because I think we can do better. And if there are people out there who are prepared to have that discussion, I would certainly have that discussion. But let me take you back to the first question, the most important. Who holds the key? The child holds the key. Because more than anything, it is about self-initiated, self-directed, and self-sustained learning. It is not about teaching. And the key word, which we haven't talked about enough today, the key word when it comes to learning, to self-initiated, self-directed, and self-sustained learning, the key word is trust. The trust between the adult and the child, the trust between the children, the trust between the adults. And what is missing most in our schooling system is trust. Governments don't trust teachers, which is why we have inspection regimes.
Correct.
Teachers don't trust governments. Investors don't trust teachers. Investors don't trust parents. Parents don't trust investors. So when we refocus and actually say the key holder is the child and the key is trust, because in the end, Sahar, for all the information that's out there, for my children, when I went to school, my homework was to find the answer. My children's homework became to find the best of a million answers. And in the end, they would go to their teacher and say, I trust you, have I got that right?
Correct.
And that is the key aspect with the child in charge. And genuinely, if somebody wants to have a conversation about learning outside the classroom, in museums, libraries and galleries and kidzanias and children's universities, particularly in the Middle East, as you know, I would be all ears yesterday.
So, Dr. Ger, I was just looking at the screen and we have got our very first question coming from Sahar Ahmed Khan. She's asking, so how do we fill the gap between what the school teaches and how the child learns? Oh, you actually did touch on that during your...
So the education of a child is a partnership. So there are many. If I had my primary school in Bahrain now, I would set parents homework. The homework would be don't be scared, because I'm no good at maths and science either. The homework would be watch certain programs with your children, visit certain places with your children, play ball games, have fun, go to museums, I think of those immense, oh my goodness, the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, or that beautiful mosque I gave the Zaid lecture, the Majlis lecture, last year at the mosque in Abu Dhabi. You have such richness of cultural capital. So the answer is that partnership. Yeah, and it is the dialogue with the co-educators and with the child. What would you like to know is a really good question to ask a child, and then to facilitate that. But that's where it starts. Can I also say, not as a plug, but generally, many of the questions will be much better answered in
the book, yes.
And just because it is, and you can get the details. And if you go on my website, Sahar will put the website details on later. I think you can buy it cheaper if you go through my website. So,
okay. We have another question. Kiran is asking what the future looks like for a child who is in this time where everything is judged based on profits and schools are selected not usually based on their needs. Rather, Google ratings and reviews. Don't want to sound pessimistic, but from a parent's perspective, it is concerning.
I have a better picture of the world than the question asker. and I know, incidentally, I know exactly where the question comes from. I concur. But I also happily disagree. When I was with my very, very dear friends in Doha at some point in September 2024, and we had a big audience. I was speaking at a conference, and the audience was full of teachers and children and parents. And we reminded ourselves of the unfairness experienced by the children in Gaza. I saw empathy, I saw tears, I saw innovation, and I saw a determination to make it better. And I want to hang on to that. I respect the question, but I respectfully think that the world is better than that.
And I think we have had that discussion before, but I think sometimes when teachers are facing parents and everyone is talking about Google reviews, I think teachers usually lose heart and they.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. And I think I'd like to say this, that we need to focus on the child and serving the child and not the system. When I was a teacher, I loved my children. And funnily enough, so did their parents. So we had much more in common.
Correct.
And it's so we need the refocus back on the child, and we actually need the communality. If I sit down with a mum and dad and say, I know you love your kids, I love them too, how could we make things better together? Do you know what? Google what's it goes out the window very quickly.
Yeah, completely agreed. Completely agreed. Okay, everyone, I'm very sorry if you were trying to ask more questions. I'm just taking one last from Ayman. Are you still there? Walaikum assalam.
Hi.
I was actually very excited to ask a question that I was waiting for. And actually, I have two questions about education. Number one, what advice would Dr. Ger give to educators and leaders looking to implement experience-based learning in their institutions?
So that's a very easy one. Thank you for that one. And the answer I alluded to earlier is about purpose and answering why questions. So really simply, when I was a little boy, I had a very boring maths teacher. If A is 2 and B is 3, what is C? I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't understand your language. I'm bored. I'm not interested. Oh, has it got anything to do with triangles by any chance? Because I'm not interested in them either. However, had you approached the question in two ways, would have gone, Johan Cruyff and Ajax play in triangles, I would have wanted to know about triangles all day long. And the second one would have been Toblerone, because they're triangles too, and I'm a chocolate addict. So my point is the experience makes it relevant. And it was Mr. Bennett who said, once you have purpose, you can stop looking for passion because you found it. And that's the connect.
Ayman, what was your second question, darling?
Actually, my second question is, what role do you think creativity plays in education? And how can it be fostered in students actually?
Wow.
That's
an entire talk show.
referencing my dear friend, the late Sir Ken Robinson. There is no education without creativity. It is impossible. We can school without creativity. We can bore the living daylights out of children. But education without creativity is not possible. It is simply not possible. What encourages creativity is trust. I trust you to be my pupil. I trust you to make mistakes, and I trust your capability and your desire to learn from the mistakes that you've made and enjoy that experience. That's it. We overcomplicate things. It's as simple as that.
And teaching and learning is such a simple, beautiful process, and we have just overcomplicated it with so many things. So thank you so much for reminding us, Dr. Ger, that it's not hard at all to find the purpose of education and then offer teaching and learning that connects and that speaks to the child, because that's what we really need to do.
Can I make a final suggestion?
Please do.
That once I am much more on the road to recovery, and I'll be visiting the Middle East again, and hopefully working with you, Sahar, and many other people, we should repeat this session, but we should make it a hybrid one. Those who can come, maybe we should have 50 cups of coffee and have a discussion that we can also stream at the same time. I would love to do that. It would be,
we'll make it happen.
My joy and privilege.
We'll make that happen, certainly. And Bahrain is full of curious teachers who want to genuinely do good. So we will get all of them together, inshallah. Last thing I want to say, Dr. Ger, first of all, thank you so much. I know, looking at your current health situation, it was a big ask, and you very kindly accommodated. So through your lens, education becomes less about conformity and more about curiosity. And I'm always going to take that out of all your sessions. No matter what topic you are talking about, I'm always taking my curiosity back with me as Charlie. And if this really is the chocolate factory, we may just need to leave the doors open. That's what I'm thinking. It should not have a ticket. I would leave the doors open for anyone who wants to come in and be a part of this wonder. Refill the rivers with new stories and redesign the golden tickets altogether. I think that's where I'm heading with whatever you're saying. I don't see it as a conversation. I see it as a movement, because that's what we require right now. If we don't do it now, then when will we do it?
The golden ticket is an entitlement.
Correct.
An entitlement for every child, and that's the difference between our factory and Roald Dahl's.
Correct.
Respectfully,
they were 5 only.
It's an entitlement, because the minute we talk about it not being an entitlement, we have lost the purpose.
That's correct. And that's what. And on that note, the school that I have in Pakistan, Lahore, that school is actually a living and breathing example of that every child is entitled. We're talking about education for all. We're talking about education is my right. Those are the statements that we cater to. So our doors are open for everyone. The ones who can pay the fee and the ones who are struggling, anyone can actually come through that door, and we will make sure that we transform their experience into something that they can take with them and be successful in their life. And when I say successful, I'm not talking about financial success. I'm talking about emotional well-being, and I'm talking about giving back to community and empathy. These are the things that we're forgetting when we are educating our students, our children, and that's what we really need to keep in mind. Dr. Ger, I thank you one more time. Any last statements, and then we'll say bye to everyone.
I have, you sent me a question that was a very interesting one, and it gave me a lot of thought. You see, I think your question was, if in 50 years' time somebody in an attic somewhere finds the copy of your book, what would you like them to say? And it's an interesting one, because we've talked a lot about who rather than what today. I think we've talked probably in some shape or form more about that than about anything else. And I think my answer is, I would like them to say, I love the cover. Because it starts with the glasses. Without those, I can't see.
Exactly.
And it is our sight and our vision that allow us to see through a different lens. And that would be it. So thank you for that question. It made me think a lot.
Thank you for bringing that question back in, because I was very curious finding out the answer. Thank you so much one more time, and thank you all the participants who joined, and have a pleasant evening. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You, Sahar, and I hope to see you all, inshallah, before too long.
Inshallah. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Follow and subscribe to Beyond the Box. Together, we're building the future of education.